much too complex, too complex, much too complex, too complex, too complex, too complex.
Good afternoon. My name is James K. Holder II. Some of you may know me as Sir James II, and I'd like to welcome you back to Not on My Watch. As always, I'd like to ask you to subscribe, like, comment, share. I want you to retweet this and repeat this. If you're watching, today is Wednesday, June 28th, 2017, and the resistance has gotten a little bit of a break in that the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, has decided to push back the vote to repeal Obamacare until after July 4th. Now, what does this mean? This means that we're terrifying these people. It means that at a time when the Senate would like nothing more, the GOP-led Senate and House would like nothing more than to repeal Obamacare and provide massive tax cuts to the richest Americans and the richest corporations, that they are still not prepared to move forward fully with the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. And so that is good for many of us in the resistance who have been defending the Affordable Care Act, but it also doesn't mean that we're out of the woods yet. We have to remain focused on this fight because this similar thing happened when it came to the House. The House previously wasn't able to get the votes when they tried to rush through and repeal the bill, repeal the law on the anniversary of it being signed, but they didn't have the votes, and so they had to pull that out. So, but they were able to later make a few adjustments and then pass it really quickly. And so I don't want us to be misguided in thinking that this is sort of an automatic victory. Keep working on the resistance. And, essentially, we're in a situation in this country where you have the Affordable Care Act versus the Affordable Health Care Act. So the Affordable Care Act obviously is Obamacare. You have the Affordable Health Care Act, or American Health Care Act, that's what it is. And that is Trump Care, which is basically what the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, predicts would throw 22 million Americans off of their health insurance by 2026. And so that is what we need to be worried about. But then also there's the argument for single payer universal health care. And I guess to me, there are issues with the single-payer concept. Obviously, there are issues with the Affordable Care Act. But we know fully that we don't want the American Health Care Act. We do not want Trump care. And so what I would love to see is people working for the single-payer to not immediately reject the Affordable Care Act. We've seen so much rejection and so much vilification of this law from the far left. This was led by Bernie Sanders for years. And now Bernie Sanders is out working to be the face of the Democratic Party. He's holding rallies in defense of Obamacare, which for years he worked to rally against. He painted Hillary Clinton as this corporate mongrel for Big Pharma because she didn't support single payer, which was, in his view, the only way to go. And so, again, some of the perfect is the enemy of the good. Like, you have to get to a point where we're able to make progress. Right now, I want to say the Affordable Care Act left something like 20 million Americans uninsured. Don't quote me on that. But that's significantly better than it was before. And so making sure that we just are working incrementally to close that gap as opposed to opposing the Affordable Care Act is important. Bernie Sanders, a lot of the reason why many of us resist Bernie Sanders or reject Bernie Sanders is because when it came to the 2012 election, Bernie Sanders was not all in with Barack Obama like he was in 2008. This man literally called for someone to primary him primarily based on the flaws as Bernie saw them with the Affordable Care Act. Now, mind you, Bernie Sanders voted for the Affordable Care Act, then spent much of the 2016 election complaining about how it didn't go far enough, it didn't do enough, and that it had to be basically done away with. We've seen in these weeks leading up to the potential repeal of this law that protects millions of Americans with pre-existing conditions, that prevents an insurance company from cutting you off after you've reached a certain amount of expenditure, like out of your own pocket for the year. It's quite remarkable to see him do this about face and be given credit as this sort of savior for healthcare, when really, had it not been for his campaign actively targeting Barack Obama's healthcare law, we probably wouldn't be in this situation where it's in a vulnerable state now. So I'm calling on everybody who is an ally of healthcare. If you care more about punishing insurance companies, if you care more about punishing the rich, if you care more about that than protecting American families and their wealth through health, then you're doing it wrong. So the Affordable Care Act has a focus on the person, the laws that don't allow people to be discriminated against based on a pre-existing condition, based on ability to pay. Little stuff like extending the amount of grace period you have to pay your insurance premium. It went from 60 days to 90 days. If you go 90 days without paying your health insurance, again, don't quote me on this, it might be relative to your individual plan. But it gave you more time, more flexibility on paying your health insurance premiums so that you weren't finding yourself in a desperate situation if you got sick or if you had an emergency, which we're all susceptible to. So, my single payer friends, aside from the whole women won't have access to reproductive rights thing, I don't have a problem with achieving universal health care. I don't have a problem with single payer as a concept, but the issue is you have to figure out a way to get from point A to point B. And right now, if we're at point A, we don't want to go back to point Z to get back to point B, which is where you're trying to get. There's got to be a way that we can work together in the resistance to make sure that Affordable Care Act is covered, people are covered with their pre-existing conditions, people don't die, families don't go bankrupt in the next 5 or 6 years until we get, hopefully, someone, a Democrat in office, or, and then ultimately implement this new law. We've got to figure out a way to work together on that. So calm the fuck down, work with us, and let's keep what we have now. Let's shore up this ground, and then let's take steps forward towards covering all Americans. Which is, of course, always the goal. I want to talk briefly because today's been this week's been kind of interesting. With the postponement of this vote, that was sort of terrifying. And so yesterday when we found out that they were going to delay this, it was sort of a weight off our shoulders, but it really gave me a little bit of time to reflect and sort of ask some questions about where are we as a nation, where are we as a country, as a body of the resistance. And so I posted a couple things to my Twitter page at JKH2. The first one just kind of asked, which do you fear more, the GOP or ISIS? A lot of people responded to this. 97%, 93% of you said that you fear the GOP more than you fear ISIS. So GOP, if you're working and you're allegedly trying to protect us from ISIS, clearly you don't have the confidence of the American people when we feel like we're going to die at the hands of you repealing our health care. I wanted to talk about also a question I posed that just asked simply, do you still believe in America? And, of the options, sadly, 49% of you responded, and this is just an informal anecdotal poll. I know it means nothing. This is by no means a Rasmussen poll or anything reputable like that. But the idea was just to kind of ask, how do people feel? 49% of you said that you do still believe in America, which means 51% of you either said, no, you don't, or hell no, you don't, and you never did believe in America. And that's kind of sad because it means we're close but no cigar. And so what does it take? What I wanted to focus today on just, what do you believe in? What do you have faith in? Are you keeping the faith? Where are you with this whole resistance movement? And so I will say that this past week has taught me a lot. And one thing that I did that was different, I actually called my senators. That's not something I've ever done before. I am blessed to live in a district where my congressman is John Lewis. He worked tirelessly to make sure that the Affordable Care Act passed originally. And so I am never really worried about how my congressman is going to behave. But my senators, obviously in Georgia, are both red people, and so who knows what they're going to do. But I called both of them, left voicemails. I was polite to them. And this was at the behest of Madam Secretary, unfortunately not Madam President, Hillary Clinton, who said, if you're waiting for the right, in a tweet, if you're waiting for the right time to call your senators, now would be it. But the combination of getting people to call their senators, getting people to really unite around this issue, even getting Bernie Sanders to finally, again, make this about face and defend the Affordable Care Act, which he had attacked so doggedly for the last 6 years, helped us get to the point where it put a bit of fear, it put a bit of fire under these senators in our Senate to just say, okay, let's think about this, because we might lose our jobs over this. We might really have a bad reaction to this. So we have to do the small steps, and we have to keep doing those steps. We can't just rely on the conscience of GOP senators to not take our health care, because we know that that Obamacare is a transformative law that helps many, but it also cuts into the insurance companies' profits, and so they're gunning for it, you know? So we have to be resolute in our resistance against the repeal of this law. This is probably the most important thing, one of the most important things. There's a lot of important things going on, but this is very, very, very important. So I'm demanding that you all focus. And if I can call my senators, y'all can call y'all senators too, because I'm not a phone person. But that was inspired by Hillary Clinton. And so, of course, I would be remiss if I had a discussion about who inspires me, who do I have faith in, without mentioning Hillary Clinton, at least briefly. But I do want to kind of move on to a list that I compiled of people who inspire me in the resistance and in America, despite what we are experiencing now. So Ben Wickler, at Ben Wickler on Twitter, posted this thread. And it was supposed to be this inspirational thread. And I saw it sort of immediately when it had like 6,000 retweets, and then it got to 20,000 retweets and 30,000 retweets, and I was like, I'll read this a little bit later, because I hate inspirational things. I hate things that are supposed to inspire you to feel some kind of way. But it basically talked about this live Twitter feed or Facebook live feed from Cory Booker and John Lewis sitting on the steps of the Capitol. And you should read this thread. It's everywhere now. But that moment of just Cory Booker and John Lewis sitting on these steps and just having a conversation and involving people and just bringing people into the conversation, it just reminded me of just this communal experience. And one side of it, I shy away from being like biblical on here, but just where 2 or 3 gather in my name, that's where the church is. So that's kind of one fundamental principle of Christianity. It's like, okay, the church isn't necessarily this building or this structure. It is about sort of the working together of 2 people. And then there is also 2 to 3 or more. And then there's also this idea of, this from Frederick Douglass, and I quoted this before, also when it was the House of Representatives trying to take our health care, also regarding Cory Booker, Senator Cory Booker. And so it really, this idea of one and God make a majority, where even though we have the majority in the Senate, we have the minority in the Senate, we have the minority in the House, we are placed in a situation where we don't have the immediate power to make decisions, but if you have faith, if you have a collective, if you have the group, if you have the will of the American people, we can ultimately resist, we can combat all of this negative stuff. And so, again, without getting too biblical, let's just pull on American heroes, right? Frederick Douglass, does it get any better than that? He is one proponent who never really focused on the numbers or having a majority to get progress. And so I think that spirit we need to take with us. We need to use technology. We need to get people involved in the conversation. We need to get people to understand that the pre-existing condition law alone helps everyone in the sense that it helps somebody through 1 degree of separation. Everybody knows somebody who is struggling with cancer, or who has a child who has cancer, or some rare disease. Everyone knows someone who has a pre-existing condition. And so whether that's cancer, whether that's HIV/AIDS, whether it's diabetes, whether it's high blood pressure, whatever it is, we are all impacted by that one aspect of this law. So if for no other reason, that should be a reason to resist this. Whether you're on the single payer side, single payer or nothing side, whether you're on the ACA, AHCA, we should all be focused on this. And my thing is, who knows? Perhaps the GOP will ultimately pass something through their efforts. But they could keep the more popular aspects, as their presidential nominee, now President Donald Trump, promised he was going to keep pre-existing conditions covered. He was going to make sure everyone was covered. He was going to do all these things, and now we're seeing this bill that's just going to strip from us, just going to take directly from us and cause us to be in more debt, more of harm's way financially. And so that's what we have to be weary of. John Lewis and Cory Booker are heroes. John Lewis obviously is in a different echelon of hero-ness, but Cory Booker, you got a lot to prove. I didn't like your saying that we shouldn't revoke Jared Kushner's security clearance. I don't know why Jared Kushner has a security clearance. So that doesn't look good when Jared Kushner donated to your campaign. Does that mean I would never support Cory Booker? Does that mean I would never vote Cory Booker for president? No, it doesn't mean that. But it does mean you're already on thin ice. So, this display here, sincerely, I do feel like Cory Booker has some type of an anointing. He has a power behind him that's good. And I think we need to support that. We don't need to throw our best and brightest away simply because they disagree on one thing, but we do need to hold them accountable. So those 3 people inspire me so far: Hillary Clinton, John Lewis, Cory Booker. 4th, Kamala Harris, of course, Senator Kamala Harris of the great state of California. We always want to continually sing your praises because we know that our competitors on the far left and the far right will not. Brilliant lawmaker that we need to support in all of her efforts, and we need to defend her and other women who are in the face of this onslaught anytime something comes up. And that includes Joy Reid. Joy Reid of MSNBC, host of AM Joy, that comes on Saturdays and Sundays at 10 a.m. from 10 a.m. to noon. Also on XM Radio, Sirius XM. We've got to get to the point where we decide that we're going to defend people like Kamala Harris, people like Joy Reid, people like Nancy Pelosi, people like Maxine Waters, all of whom have faced this alt-left gauntlet of just hatred when they disagree with someone like a Bernie Sanders. And so I'm actually done with that. I think that we have to get to a point where we as Democrats decide that we are going to defend people on our team. And if you're not going to work to defend people on your team, whether they're black, brown, female, whether they are Muslim, whether they're Hispanic, whether they're gay, whatever, we have to work as a team. And if you are not willing to defend people on the Democratic team, that doesn't mean you got to defend ideas that you don't support. What I'm saying is develop an idea of understanding what a consensus is. I can't support this. I can support this. This is what I want. And I think too many Democrats, too many progressives are too far into this thumbs up idea. If it's not your idea, it's not an idea. If it's not what you want, it doesn't exist. You're not willing to support something that would work for everyone else in order to build a consensus and then move forward as a team. And so if you can't be a team member, y'all know where the door is. I walk in the door in every episode, except last week when I did something a little new. Still working in the one-take format, so I'm going to breeze through this. But those 4 women really, truly inspire me. Again, Kamala Harris, Joy Reid. She's not a lawmaker, but she could be because she's brilliant. Nancy Pelosi and also Maxine Waters. I mean, Maxine Waters has been the face of the resistance from the very beginning. And she's someone that we need to continually celebrate and lift up and defend. Because before you know it, they're going to be calling for her to resign too. The New Georgia Project. Now, I know John Ossoff lost. I know it was a chilling blow that this, random guy who didn't even live in the district got within 3 points of winning a race that had previously gone 20 points in the other party. I know that was a huge letdown for many of us, but not really, because we have to think about the changing demographics, the changing electorate within Georgia as a result of that race. We talk about a waste of money. It wasn't really a waste, because the attention got a ruling on a law that basically mandated, even in a state like Georgia, that our runoff has to be, the registration deadline for our runoff has to be within 30 days. That's one win from that. Also, more registered voters who look like us have inched us towards that line. So we might get a more progressive mayor of Atlanta when that race happens in November. We might get a more progressive governor of the state of Georgia in Stacey Abrams when she runs next year. And so we have to stop thinking about this. We want this immediate gratification. We want this result. We want to win now. And if it don't happen now, it don't count. That's not true. There's progress, and sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's incremental. But groups like the New Georgia Project, and as you remember, we had S01E21, who is the executive director of the New Georgia Project, on a special episode. I don't remember the number of the episode, but it was State of Georgia versus the Resistance. I'm discussing voter suppression, gerrymandering, and the ways that all these things target people of color and the new American majority and weaken the votes of Democrats. So we have to look at the smaller victories and take them into account too. How do they play into the bigger plan? Because it's not always about the immediate win. Groups like the New Georgia Project are pivotal. But even beyond that, S01E21 is a hero too. And she's a Democratic woman. Democratic women are our salvation. And we need to, as a party, recognize that. If by the time we get to 2020, we need to have another serious female contender for the presidency of the United States. Hillary Clinton knocked down that wall in becoming the first female to be nominated, woman to be nominated by a major party. That's huge. That's a huge deal. Even that's progress. Okay? She might not be president. She might have gotten more votes. We know it's possible. So how do we get beyond where we are and make that progress that's necessary, where women feel like they are contributing and are appreciated in our party? If it comes to the point where every time a GOP group levies attacks against Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, Elizabeth Warren, Elizabeth Warren, Maxine Waters, and then we decide as a party we're not going to defend these women. We're just going to say, okay, we can't run them because the GOP has so much against them. That's not teamwork, and that's not a team I want to be a part of. So if we're not going to prioritize women, if we're not going to protect women's right to vote and be seen and vocal in the party, we have nothing. We are going to be dead in the water as a party. So that is where we need to focus. We need to focus specifically on women, empowering the female vote, empowering women to run for office, and make progress in that regard. Because the politics around women running for office are different than anybody else. And if we can't get over those barriers, if we can't learn from the mistakes of all the misogyny that was levied against Hillary Clinton, we're not going to grow anywhere as a country. And as long as women are not treated as equal, we are wasting half of our talent in this country. Our talent for leadership in business, government, education, all of it. We're throwing away half of our talent, which means we're only half as good as we could be because we refuse to get past this point where women are equal and oftentimes not better suited for most of the jobs at hand. So, moving along. Last woman I want to talk about, one who I miss dearly. I want Mama Michelle to come back because the resistance is trying. We're doing okay, but we have so many in the previous administration who won't touch this with a 10-foot pole. Barack Obama's quiet. Hillary Clinton's fairly quiet. I mean, she does a lot. But I think one good voice to come back, and I'm not one to put pressure on people to do stuff that they don't want to do. Michelle Obama, I know you got your own life. But Mama Michelle, we need you back. We need you to come in and talk about something. And it don't have to be anything politically related, but we just need your presence. If you were just more vocal, I really wish Michelle Obama would have her own TV show. She should just have a daytime TV show where she talks about stuff, because having her voice over the airwaves in this country, I think, would provide some kind of a calming effect. It would provide something that we need to bring us all back to center, because one thing about Michelle is that everybody respected her. You might not have liked her. You might have had stuff to say about her if you were on the left. I mean, if you were on the right. But you respected that woman, like, because she was qualified to do basically anything. And I really would love to see you back in the forefront in a really major way. So I'm begging you to come back and save us from ourselves. That being said, I want to talk about the new show, The Counter, which is at The Counter TV on Twitter, launching in August of this year. So I've been doing a lot of work to put that together with the help of you all. And much of what The Counter serves to do, first of all, it's a play on words, obviously, which is I have a counter here where I cook in my studio, in my home, but then also just the idea of a lunch counter at Woolworths, and the struggle for progress and equity and equality just within food service. And so with the environmental impacts, with agricultural workers and different things dealing with the attacks against Mexican Americans, who typically are a larger part of the workforce that brings in our crops. Those are the things that, with that changing, it's going to affect our food prices and availability of produce. Anytime corn is impacted, beef is impacted. Anything, all of these things are economic issues. They're also household economic issues. So this is a program about economics, and I want to teach and discuss economics across our country, across our borders, state borders, through the lens of plates of food and recipes. So we're going to teach you how to get the most out of your food budget. We're going to talk about other cultures that have emigrated to the United States and how a dish like corned beef and rice is made in West Africa, and it's one of those dishes that requires no refrigeration because that technology isn't available to all households there. And so how do we use bodega available products to make good, healthy meals for your family if you live in a food desert? Many topics to discuss there. With that, I want to thank all of the sponsors to the show. I set a goal of getting 15 producer level sponsors. That is anyone who donates $100 or more to paypal.me/JKH2 by basically July 24th. And that would allow me to fund all of the show before it starts taping, and I don't have to worry about, I can't afford this week to tape and do my salmon episode or the chicken episode, because this is a whole new thing for me. So I want to thank, in addition to the people I thanked last week, so far we have 9 producer level sponsors to the show. 6 as of this week are Lee W. of Novato, California, Catherine M. of Oakland, California, Kelly F., Leslie C. of Dearborn, Michigan, also at DJ Circuit with a Q, thank you for the knives, and Jen K. of Monrovia, Maryland, of all places. And of course, I'd like to thank our friends of the show, Sarah S. of Monterey, California, Laura B., Susan W. of South Jamesport, New York, Jupiter L. of Las Vegas, Nevada, Jen M. of San Jose, California, Sonia Y. of Cincinnati, Ohio, Harolyn B. of Langley, Washington, Bria S. of Victoria, BC, Canada, Shane D. of Huntington Beach, California, a lot of love from California as always, Jesse E. of Nebraska, what's going on, Jesse? Jessica P., JF of Fort Worth, Texas, Joseph R. of Groveland, Maryland, Kevin F. and David D. of York, Maine. So again, if you'd like to become a friend of the show, you can donate any amount of $1 or more to paypal.me/JKH2. If you would specifically like to become a producer-level sponsor of The Counter TV, which is the new show that launches in August, you can do so by donating $100 to that link, and you will be listed as a producer on every episode in the first season of that show. If you donate that amount after, you will be listed as a producer from the episode that airs next on. But if you want to be in every episode, you have to donate by the $100 by July 24th. So I appreciate your support on all that. It's been very, very helpful in getting everything together. A lot of this stuff has to be special ordered to do right. And also many of you have volunteered to submit aprons. I'll be wearing a different apron on every episode of the show. And so I appreciate people sending their aprons, their personal aprons that I can wear on the show and send back, or, keep or whatever. So I thank you for watching. As always, I'd like to ask you to relax, relate, and resist. Thank you.
Too complex.